Good afternoon, students. We haven't met for such a long time. So this is a method that has been chosen by all of us to keep in contact with the college teachers and the college too. We have to express our ideas, our thoughts, and this is a method to communicate all that what we have got. So students, our college that has thought this method will be very useful to all the students, and especially those students who are at home should not be idle, and they have to be active and they have to be in touch with what is going on in the college. And we too feel that it is the best method for the sake of keeping in touch with you people. And now, for the time being, I begin with the story which has been adapted by Leo Tolstoy. He is a Russian writer of novels and short stories. He is considered as one of the greatest novelists of the world. Guy de Maupassant was a 19th century French author, remembered as a master of the short story form and as a representative of the naturalist school, who depicted human lives and destinies and social forces in disillusioned and often pessimistic terms. The story Two Deer is adapted from Guy de Maupassant's earliest work, Condemned to Death. Now, from the point of understanding the text wholesome, totally, it is better to make notes first. Let us think about some of the points which are available in the text when you go on reading, so that you will understand it in a better manner. The first thing is Kingdom of Monaco. It's a small kingdom. (7,000 inhabitants). The king collects taxes. There is a gaming house. Where roulette has been played. King has got the monopoly of the gambling game. This is the first part of the story. It is an introduction to what is going on in Monaco, and Monaco, as all of us know, that it is between France and Italy on the coast of Mediterranean Sea. Now, next what we have got is the story begins with a murder was committed. Then, as naturally as possible, court trials went on. Then ultimately death sentence to the criminal. Next point, French government for the sake of executing the criminal, and the money fixed was 16,000 francs. Then Italian government £12,000. A commission and a committee then death sentence changed to life imprisonment. The criminal was placed in a small lockup. A guard was appointed to look after the criminal. Yearly expenditure was more than 600 francs. The guard was dismissed later. They thought the criminal would run away. But didn't. At last, criminal was offered a pension, that is 600 francs. So these are the points that you have to remember in order to understand the whole story, that is Two Deer. If you remember these points, the points will help you to understand the text and the descriptions that are available in the text. The introductory activity, pre-reading activities, these are quite helpful to all the students, and this type of making notes, that is also very useful to the students from the point of understanding the text. Near the borders of France and Italy, on the shore of the Mediterranean Sea, lies a tiny little kingdom called Monaco. Many a small country town can boast more inhabitants than this kingdom, for there are only about 7,000 of them all told, and if all the land in kingdom were divided, there would not be an acre for each inhabitant. But in this toy kingdom, there is a real kinglet, and he has a palace, the courtiers and ministers, and a bishop, and generals, and an army. So as I have already written on the blackboard, where is Monaco, which we can understand more when we go through the atlas. And they have said already, France and Italy, they have mentioned, and in between these two countries, Monaco, a small kingdom available. And the residents, the inhabitants, the people who dwell there are very less, and they have said that about 7,000, and then if all the land in kingdom were divided, there would not be an acre for each inhabitant. People would not get more areas, more acres for the sake of cultivation. And further they say that in this toy kingdom, in this small kingdom, there is a king, and it has a palace, the king has a palace, and courtiers and ministers, and a bishop, and generals, and an army. So though it is a small kingdom, we have to understand that the king has got all the requirements, the palace, courtiers, ministers, and a bishop, and generals, and an army also. Naturally, the expenditure is there for the king. In the next paragraph, they say that it is not a large army, only 60 men in all, but still it is an army. There are also taxes in this kingdom as elsewhere. As I have already written on the blackboard, that taxes are collected. King is available, though small kingdom, and collection of taxes is going on. A tax on tobacco, descriptions available, and on wine and spirits, and a poll tax is also available. So this is something special. Poll tax in the sense a tax, the tax levied in on every person in the community or in the country. But though the people there drink and smoke as people do in other countries, there are so few of them that the prince would have been hard put to it to feed his courtiers and officials and to keep himself, if he had not found a new and special source of revenue. So we have to understand that the king doesn't get a good amount of income, and that is why he has to think of other options, other areas where more income is available, more tax, and through tax more income is also available. Because courtiers are there, ministers are there, and a bishop is also available, generals are available, and an army has to be looked after, or it has to be maintained. This special revenue comes from a gaming house where people play roulette. Roulette is a gambling game. It is in the glossary, it has been described. It is a gambling game. People play there, and gambling, as all of us know, that it is play games of chances, whether you lose or win. For money anyway. People play, and whether they win or lose, the keeper always gets a percentage on the turnover, and out of his profits he pays a large sum to the prince. So this is how the king gets more income other than the income which is available in the country through tax on tobacco, wine, spirits. The reason he pays so much is that it is the only such gambling establishment left in Europe. Some of the little German sovereigns used to keep gaming houses of the same kind, but some years ago they were forbidden to do so. The reason they were stopped was because these gaming houses did so much harm. A man would come and try his luck, and he would risk all he had and lose it. Then he would even risk money that did not belong to him, and lose that too. And then in despair, he would drown or shoot himself. So gambling is not good for the family, good for the person, because he will lose in the sense day after day. If he goes on losing money, naturally he will commit suicide, and it is not a good habit which has been understood here. That is why Germans forbade their rulers to make money in this way, but there was no one to stop the Prince of Monaco, and he remained with a monopoly of the business. This is what I have said, the introduction of the very story. Where is Monaco and what are available there? The descriptions are available in the text, but we have to think about these factors so that it is easy for us to understand the text. So now everyone who wants to gamble goes to Monaco. Whether they win or lose, the prince gains by it. You can't earn stone palaces by honest labor, as the proverb says, and the kinglet of Monaco knows it is a dirty business. But what is he to do? He has to live, and to draw a revenue from drink and from tobacco is also not a nice thing. So he lives and reigns and rakes in the money and holds his court with all the ceremony of a real king. He needs money. For the sake of money, he has supported gaming houses where gambling went on. He has his coronation, his levees, he rewards, sentences and pardons, and he also has his reviews, councils, laws and courts of justice, just like other kings, only all on a smaller scale. So the kingdom is small, and all these activities are going on in a smaller way. Now the story begins, where I have already told you a criminal was there. He committed a heinous crime. Now it happened a few years ago that a murder was committed in the Stoy princess domains. The people of that kingdom are peaceable, and such a thing had not happened before. The judges assembled with much ceremony and tried the case in the most judicial manner. There were judges and prosecutors and jurymen and barristers. They argued and judged, and at last they condemned the criminal to have his head cut off as the law directs. So far so good. Next they submitted the sentence to the prince. The prince read the sentence and confirmed it. If the fellow must be executed, execute him. So now we have understood that a murderer was there. He committed the criminal activity, And the court trials went on, and death sentence was given to him, and the king also agreed for the very decree, very judgment. If the fellow must be executed, execute him. The prince, the kingdom of Monaco, he also supported the very court order. There was only one hitch in the matter, and that was that they had neither a guillotine for cutting heads off nor an executioner. The ministers considered the matter and decided to address an inquiry to the French government, asking whether the French could not lend them a machine and an expert to cut off the criminal's head, and if so, would the French kindly inform them what it would cost. The letter was sent. A week later, the reply came. A machine and an expert could be supplied, and the cost would be 16,000 francs. This was laid before the king. He thought it over. 16,000 francs. The wretch is not worth the money, said he. Can't it be done somehow cheaper? Why 16,000 francs, which is more than 2 francs a head on the whole population? The people won't stand it, and it may cause a riot. Now once again, French government 16,000 francs, and this expenditure cannot be borne by Monaco, and people would not support such an expenditure, and it may cause a riot or confusion and terrible disturbance in the society. So a council was called to consider what could be done, and it was decided to send a similar inquiry to the King of Italy. The French government is republican and has no proper respect for king, but the King of Italy was a brother monarch, and it might be induced to do the thing cheaper. So the letter was written, and a prompt reply was received. Now what to do? The expenditure is more, and that is why Italy, the King of Italy, he was also requested by Monaco. Now the Italian government wrote that they would have pleasure in supplying both a machine and an expert, and the whole cost would be 12,000 francs, including traveling expenses. This was cheaper, but still it seemed too much. The rascal was really not worth the money. It would still mean really nearly 2 francs more per head on the taxes. Another council was called. They discussed and considered how it could be done with less expense. Could not one of the soldiers perhaps be got to do it in a rough and homely fashion? The general was called and was asked, "Can't you find us a soldier who would cut the man's head off? In war, they don't mind killing people. In fact, that is what they are trained for." So the general talked it over with the soldiers to see whether one of them would not undertake the job. But none of the soldiers would do it. "No," they said, "we don't know how to do it. It is not a thing we have been taught." Now the thing is that Italian governments, once again, they have also said that 12,000 francs the fee has to be paid by Monaco, and this amount is also not a very small amount. Monaco is not possible to do this sort of a work with so much expenditure, and that is why a council has been summoned there. They discussed, council was called, discussed and considered how it could be done with less expense. And they have thought whether the generals, whether the soldiers could do this work. The general was called and he was asked, can't the soldiers do the work of killing a murderer? But the soldiers did not agree, because soldiers' job is not to kill human beings. They have to guard the country and they haven't been taught killing. They do the work of fighting for the sake of nation. The soldiers, they have said that the soldiers would not do it, and they do not know how to do it, and they haven't been taught how to kill human beings. In war they don't mind killing people, but it is not a matter to be thought seriously here, because that is not related to killing murderers. What was to be done is the question now. Again the ministers considered and reconsidered. They assembled a commission and a committee, which I have already told you, a commission and a committee that has been once again sat, and a subcommittee, and at last they decided, and the best thing would be to alter the death sentence to one of imprisonment for life, or life imprisonment it can be called. This would enable the prince to show his mercy, and it would come cheaper. This is a thought. The prince agreed to this, and so the matter was arranged. The only hitch now was that there was no suitable prison for a man sentenced for life. Death sentence has been changed to life imprisonment, and life imprisonment in the sense he has to be placed in a cellar or in a jail, and the criminal has been placed in a lockup now, sentenced for life. There was a small lockup where people were sometimes kept temporarily, but there was no strong prison fit for permanent use. However, they managed to find a place and would do, a place that would do, and they put the young fellow there and placed a guard over him. The guard had to watch the criminal and had also to fetch his food from the palace kitchen. So a guard was appointed, which I have already told you. The prisoner remained there month after month till a year had passed. But when a year had passed, the kinglet, looking over the account of his income and expenditure one day, noticed a new item of expenditure. This was for the keep of the criminal, nor was it a small item either. There was a special guard, and there was also the man's food. It came to more than 600 francs. Expenditure was more than 600 francs a year. And the worst of it was that the fellow was still young and healthy and might live for 50 years. When one came to reckon it up, reckoning in the sense have an opinion on the fact, the matter was serious. It would never do. So the prince summoned his ministers and said to them, "You must find some cheaper way of dealing with this rascal. The present plan is too expensive." And the ministers met and considered and reconsidered. So the guard was dismissed later, which I have told, and that is the process that is going to take place soon. Gentlemen, in my opinion, we must dismiss the guard. But then rejoined another minister, "The fellow will run away." "Well," said the first speaker, "let him run away and be hanged to him." So they reported the result of their deliberations to the kinglet, and he agreed with them. The guard was dismissed, and they waited to see what would happen. All that happened was that at dinner time the criminal came out, and not finding his guard, he went to the prince's kitchen to fetch his own dinner. He took what was given him, returned to the prison, shut the door on himself, and stayed inside. Next day, the same thing occurred. He went for his food at the proper time, but as for running away, he did not show the least sign of it. What was to be done? They considered the matter again. So this ultimately leads to criminal was offered a pension 600 francs. We shall have to tell him straight out, said they, that we do not want to keep him. So the minister of justice had him brought before him. Why do you not run away? Said the minister. There is no guard to keep you. You can go where you like, and the prince will not mind. I dare say the prince would not mind, replied the man. But I have nowhere to go. What can I do? You have ruined my character by your sentence, and people will turn their backs on me. Besides, I have got out of the way of working. You have treated me badly. It is not fair. In the first place, when once you sentenced me to death, you ought to have executed me. But you did not do it. That is one thing. I did not complain about that. Then you sentenced me to imprisonment for life and put a guard to bring me my food. But after a time, you took him away again, and I had to fetch my own food. Again, I did not complain, but now you actually want me to go away. I can't agree to do that. You may do as you like, but I won't go away, the criminal, the murderer, said. What was to be done? Once more the council was summoned. So first we have got, there was a commission and a committee. Then once again there is a council, there is a committee to think of the plan, whether he has to be put in the prison or not. And then once again a council. So 3 times these activities went on. First, as I have said, a commission and a committee, and then there was the ministers met and considered and reconsidered the matter, what to be done with regard to the very criminal. Now at last, once more the council was summoned. What course could they adopt? The man would not go. They reflected and considered. The only way to get rid of him was to offer him a pension. Pension 600 francs. And so they reported to the prince, there is nothing else for it, said they. We must get rid of him somehow. The sum fixed was 600 francs, and this was announced to the prisoner. So thereby they want to avoid the criminal, avoid the murderer, and somehow they want to put an end to this scene and this sort of a very pathetic situation. Well, said he, I don't mind so long as you undertake to pay it regularly. On that condition I am willing to go, the criminal agreed. So the matter was settled. He received 1/3 of his annuity, that is fixed sum of money, in advance, and left the king's dominions. It was only a quarter of an hour by rail, and he emigrated. He went out of the country, leave his own country. It was only a quarter of an hour by rail, and he emigrated and settled just across the frontier, where he bought a bit of land, started market gardening, and now lives comfortably. He always goes at the proper time to draw his pension. Having received it, he goes to the gaming tables, stakes 2 or 3 francs, sometimes wins and sometimes loses, and then returns home. He lives peaceably and well. So this is the story of the criminal, and think of the condition of the criminal. Initially he was given proper food, later he was not looked after by the very guard. The food was not placed properly to him, and he has to search for his food, and these problems took place. And the king was also in a very deplorable condition, pathetic situation, and he was not in a position to spend money for the sake of this criminal. He was not in a position to spend on the criminal. It is a good thing that he did not commit his crime in a country where they do not grudge expense to cut a man's head off or to keep him in prison for life. So at last we have understood that it is a blessing in disguise for the criminal, because he was not given punishment, he was not given even proper punishment, and then of course he was given money and he was made to go away from the country, and that was actually a blessing in disguise, says Leo Tolstoy. And we can understand that throughout the lesson there is no proper plan on the part of the king, and everything went on in a very bad manner, and ultimately the expenditure did not stop, it has been continued, and this made him to suffer. So dear students, when you go through the text, there is a proverb that there is available, the meaning of the proverb that you have to understand. There are new words probably available, and roulette, the spelling and the very meaning that you have to learn. What is gambling, what is a gaming house, and what is poll tax. These all things, the new aspects which you have to understand. Thank you students, thank you one and all.